So in today's episode, we're doing a quick Q&A session around common questions I hear from hikers. Now, all the questions I'm going to be talking about today, messages I've received from either my clients or other hikers reaching out to me over the last couple of weeks around some issues they find with their training. And they're also questions which I've heard multiple times over the last few years of training hikers, and I thought it might be worthwhile just covering them on this podcast today. So anyone else who might be struggling with something similar can sort of get an idea and an insight into how to overcome them. Now, none of this stuff is incredibly complicated, none of this stuff is incredibly deep, but sometimes you just need a quick answer to an issue which has been plaguing you for a little while. So with that being said, let's just jump straight into it and start with the first question. So the first one was about loaded hill intervals or stair intervals. And basically it went in my own words here is, Rowan, you always recommend long hill intervals to develop muscular endurance, which is, if you're not 100% sure about muscular endurance, it's the ability of the legs to produce force again and again and again and again. And it's just developing that is long periods of really burny work for the legs. So when it comes to hill or stair intervals, I generally say trying to find a hill or a stairs that take you 4 minutes or more or 5 minutes or more, and just going up and down that set of stairs or that hill to develop that muscular endurance. And the question was basically, look, you recommend these longer intervals on a hill or stairs, but I just can't find anything that's long. And the longest I can find is something that's going to take me about 2 minutes at a time. And in that situation, it's a really, really simple fix. If you can't find a set of stairs or a hill which is long enough and it's going to take you long enough to sort of get that period of 4 minutes or more, which is going to develop that muscular endurance, is you simply want to make up the remainder of that time which you can't do with extra exercise, either at the bottom or the top. So in this situation, if you're at you've got a 2 minute hill, you might do 30 seconds of squats and 30 seconds of lunges at the bottom of the hill, walk up for 2 minutes, 30 seconds of squats, 30 seconds of lunges at the top, and then go back down the bottom and repeat that a few times. Super simple fix, just as effective. The only thing you want to think about here is the squats and the lunges or whatever exercises you choose to do want to be nice and slow, and they want to be really burny on your legs, as opposed to trying to get you huffed and puffed. You want to really, really try to squeeze the working muscles and get some pretty decent burn. And that's an easy enough way to just mix up those hill and stair intervals, and it even can be a bit of a progression if you are getting a bit bored and you want a bit extra challenge there. So that's question number one. So question number two is about body weight exercises at home. So lots of hikers are training at home at the moment. Not many people have access to a huge amount of equipment. So I figured this question would be relatively relevant. And it was basically, look, I'm doing a lot of body weight exercises at home, but I just find it too easy. And I don't actually have any equipment. How can I make this a little bit harder? And the simplest way here is you can play around with the tempo, which is basically the speed of doing an exercise. Most people generally, when they do exercises, whether it's squats, lunges, glute bridges, or whatever, they go through the exercise relatively quickly. And that's just how we naturally do it. But if you do slow things down, it does get significantly harder. So if you naturally do a squat and you might do 2 seconds on the way down and 1 second on the way up, simply just turning that into 4 seconds on the way down and 1 second on the way up will make it significantly harder. The same thing, you can add pauses in certain places. So on the same squat, you might go down for 4 seconds, you might pause at the bottom for 2 seconds, and then go up for 1 second. Or you might go down halfway, pause for a second, then the whole way down, pause for a second, and then all the way up. You can do this on more or less any exercise, and you have a play around with slowing down the tempo and adding pauses, and that in itself, without adding any extra weight or doing any type of equipment, can be really, really effective. It's just adding some extra intensity, extra difficulty, and extra stimulus into your exercises. So the next one sort of backs off with that is with another question just asking, look, I've got no equipment, what can I use as a substitute when I'm at home? And the simplest way of doing this is just a loaded pack. Like every hiker will have a pack in one way or another. You can load this up with water bottles, with a dry bag full of water, or books or whatever, and you can do 99% of exercises with a loaded pack. You can do a squat with a pack, you can do a lunge with a pack, you can do rows or single arm row with a pack. If you're trying to simulate like a chest press, you can lie on your back and just on the floor and press it up and down. You can probably do 99% of things with a pack, and it's really, really effective. Or the other alternative, which won't cost you very much money, is just what's called a power band, or it's a thicker exercise band. You can buy them online. And I usually recommend my online clients get one of these because they're really, really handy for a whole bunch of different exercises. And if you just go online and just type in a power band and it's just sort of this thick plastic band, rubber band I should say, which you can substitute a lot of exercises in. So if you've got no equipment, start off with a loaded pack. If you feel like you're a little bit limited, buy one of those bands, have a play around, and if you really feel like you're limited, then you can look at buying dumbbells and that, but that's probably the best way of going about that. The next question I got actually after the podcast the other day when I was talking about loaded pack walking, and I've heard this quite a few times. And I was like, look, I love the idea around loaded pack walking, except I only own a day pack and it's just too small. So I can only load up about, I think it was like 8 or 9 kilos into the pack, and then I just don't have any more room. Now, what can I do here? So a few options here. Option number one, you can always buy a bigger pack. That's common sense, but that's the first option. If you don't want to buy a bigger pack, is if you can't go any heavier on your loaded pack walking, just increase either the length of the walk, so go from a 60-minute walk to a 90-minute walk, or increase the speed of your walk and just intentionally walk at a quicker speed with the same pack weight. That's simple enough to do, and you can just increase that as you go through. If you're increasing the speed of your walk for the whole 45 minutes is a bit tough for you, you can do something that's called tempo walking, which is walking quick for a minute, then normal pace for a minute, then quick for a minute, then normal pace. And then the next week you can do quick for 2 minutes, normal pace for 1 minute, and you can just play around with that. And that's pretty easy enough. The other option is make sure you wear your boots, and there's only an extra 500 grams or something on your feet, but that can add in a little bit extra weight. And then finally, this is sort of a follow-up question off this as well. They're asking if ankle weights were recommended. And if you haven't seen the ankle weights before, they're the old school things that you put around your ankles, put an extra kilo or 2 around each foot. And they're an interesting one. They're not something I'd usually recommend, because they can sort of change the way you walk, they can change the muscle activation, and over the long term, they're probably not an incredibly effective thing to do every single day. But in this loaded pack walking situation, you know what, they might be all right, and they might add a little bit extra stimulus. So if you got ankle weights or you want to add that to your loaded pack walking, I say why not? And probably just the stuff you're doing on the flat, so not your hill intervals. And with this, you probably don't want to be doing quick walking as well, because it does throw your walking gait around a little bit, so I probably wouldn't recommend doing it if you're trying to walk quicker than your normal speed. But if you're taking it easy, ankle weights can, I don't know, I figure they'd be relatively effective. So next question is, I got one of my clients asking me, just saying they struggle to be motivated to do longer sessions in the week at the moment. So usually they were training between 45 minutes and 60 minutes when they're in the gym, but now they're working from home and they're just really, really struggling to sort of put that time aside and just keep their head in the game. And what I said is just simply split your sessions up into shorter sessions. So take your strength sessions that go for 60 minutes and break them up into, 2 half-an-hour sessions, or even cut them down into 2 20-minute sessions. The same for cardio. Instead of doing an hour-long session, break that up into 3 20-minute sessions. And this isn't quite as optimal or efficient as you might do if you're linking everything together as a standard training program. But in this stage, it's still going to do the job. And for most hikers, it's still going to be good enough. We probably don't need to be striving for optimal at the moment. And for hikers, optimal probably isn't what you really have to chase all the time. So if that's going to be more effective, you're actually doing the training, I think that's an incredibly good way of going about it. And for this particular client, it was actually exactly what she needed. So we broke the sessions up. She now has, I think, like 4 or 5 smaller sessions in the week as opposed to 2 or 3. And she's loving it, in her own words. So I really recommend, if you are struggling with longer sessions, have a look at that. Another one I get quite a bit is my legs are sore at night and I can't sleep, and it's waking me up at like 2 or 3 o'clock. And that's really common when people dive into their program, and it's sort of coming off the back of that Loaded Packs podcast the other day, where someone was trying that out and they got exactly this. And the common thing I hear from people is like, look, I can't sleep, I'll take some ibuprofen or some Panadol and then eventually I'll be able to sleep. And yeah, that is one solution, but I don't know, it's probably not an incredibly great long-term solution. So 2 things that can really help you here. Number 1, compression tights. If you've been listening to this for a while, you know I love compression tights. They're going to be great at just relieving a little bit of muscle soreness. So whether you wear them for a couple of hours after your session before you go to bed, or whether you can wear them overnight as you sleep, they can be really, really good at reducing that soreness, stop you waking up at night, and make you feel great in the morning. The other thing is something I love is spray on magnesium oil, and you can sort of keep some of that next to your bed. You can spray it on the muscles that are sore, and they give you pretty instant relief after about 20 seconds, and that's something that's really, really handy. So I'd probably recommend having a look into that. And then the final question I want to go over today is, I got someone reaching out to me and they were like, look, I deal with bit of foot pain, a bit of knee pain. At the moment, I can't go to the gym, so how can I get fit? How can I get fit without always walking? Because walking 4 or 5 times a week was really aggravating the pain, and they were a little bit worried. And this is something I hear all the time. And basically, off-feet conditioning is what I always recommend here. So trying to find some type of exercise in which we're not putting stress through the feet, but you're still working aerobically. So generally in the gym environment, this will be something like a stationary bike or an elliptical, or going and doing some swimming. A lot of us don't have access to that at the moment. So my recommendations at the moment are either buy a really cheap stationary bike, which you can get pretty cheap online. Saying that, who knows if they're all sold out these days. Or alternatively, just buy a push bike and just buy a ratty old push bike and just go cruising around the neighborhood for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. You don't have to get anything fancy, anything special, but simply just moving around there can be a really, really effective way of keeping your aerobic fitness going, developing your trail fitness, which is still going to apply on the trail, but just not stressing out things if you do have a history of overuse injuries. So that's all the questions today, guys, and just hopefully a few of those have been able to help you. Maybe you've wondered about 1 or 2 of them before, maybe they've come up in your preparations, or maybe they might come up in the future. But now that you've got those as reference, they've got those as a resource, and hopefully they'll be able to help you out whenever these situations come up. As always, if you do have any questions about this or you'd like me to explore a little bit more, feel free to reach out to me. What I would love for you to do, guys, today is if you've been enjoying this podcast from this episode or other episodes and you have a hiking friend who hasn't listened to the podcast already, I would absolutely love it if you could share this with them, whether it's this episode or another episode they might be interested in. Send it over to them, email it over, message them over, get them on the phone, tell them all about it. And it goes a long way to helping me grow this podcast, and I really appreciate your help trying to grow this and reach more hikers. So very much hope you've enjoyed this today, guys. Any questions, let me know, but if not, we will talk to you very soon. Bye.